Man, am I glad to be here. Oh my God. I come from a town in Connecticut that is built on slate, on rock, and I come to Asheville, which is a town that's built on quartz crystal. I mean, how can you not love the vibe in Asheville? You just put your foot over the line and you feel it. Oh man, thank you for having me again. Knowing everything you already know, you invited me back. I appreciate that. So first, I'm going to tell you a story. And then I'm going to read a quote from a teacher that makes no sense. Then I'm going to talk to you about a lesson from A Course in Miracles, which is just going to piss you off, right? Then I'm going to tell you a story of mine that involves a great loss, right? And then I'm going to tie it all together with the teachings that we have been taught over and over again that will show us through these new eyes how everything in your life is not happening to you, but everything that happens to you is actually happening for you. So, there's an old story that comes out of Europe about a couple that was very, very, very poor. In fact, the only thing that they had in their hut, other than the few little pieces of rickety furniture, was a scrawny cow, the story says. It doesn't say cow. It says a scrawny cow. And this scrawny cow was enough maybe to give him a little milk, maybe to give him a little cheese, make a few little kopecks, and that's it. But it was their scrawny cow. So one day, they hear a knock on their door in the evening, their little hut, and there, standing on the other side of the door, is the great teacher, the Baal Shem Tov, great teacher with 7 of his male students. And the Baal Shem Tov, and this is unbelievable, that a man of that stature is knocking on their door. And he says, the Baal Shem Tov says, we're passing by your village on the way home after a day of study. Would you take us in and perhaps feed us before we head home? And he says, if you will grant us this, he says, what we will like is we would like to come in, and it's not just any meal we would like you to provide. We would like you to provide a feast for us. We would like some good meat. And who heard of eating meat at that time? And we would like some good wine, and we would like some fresh vegetables. So the man, Jacob, is standing there looking at this great teacher, and of course this is like the greatest honor. So he invites them in, he sits them all down, the great teacher and his 7 students sits them all down. He runs into the little kitchen area where his wife is, and he says, they've come, this is the Baal Shem Tov, this is unbelievable, and they've come to eat, and we have to serve them. And his wife said, well, we have no food. We have a little cheese, we have a little milk, but we have no food. And he said, this is an honor. We must feed them. So he gets an idea, he runs out of the house, and an hour later he comes back and his arms are filled. He's got a jug of good wine, he's got fresh meat, he's got fresh vegetables. And he lays it all out on the rickety little dining table in front of all these great men of learning. And him and his wife, him and Rachel, Jacob and Rachel, stand in the corner and watch as the Baal Shem Tov, the illustrious teacher, and his 7 students eat through all the food, drink all the wine, finish all the vegetables until there's just like a carcass of bones left on the table. The Baal Shem Tov stands up. The students stand up. He goes, thank you so very much for this meal. And they all proceed to walk out the door. And Jacob and Rachel are standing in the corner of their little hut. And I mean, it was a great honor and everything. And Rachel turns to him and said, where did you get the money for all of this food? And Jacob said, well, I sold the cow. She said, you sold the scrawny cow? And he said, I had to sell the scrawny cow. How else were we going to feed them? She says, well, now without the cow, at least with the cow we had something. Now without the cow, We don't have anything. Now nothing stands between us and utter poverty. How could you have sold the cow? Well, now it hits him what he had done. And he feels totally terrible about what he had done, totally ashamed. How could he have been so stupid? So he goes running out of the house into the woods, and he falls on his knees. He is in despair. He falls on his knees, and he begins to cry out. And what is he crying for? He is crying out because he is at the end of the road of everything he ever could have wanted to achieve. It is a total disaster, this life of his. And he does something crazy. In his praying on his knees, he begins to do something he's never done before. He begins to ask for everything he has never asked for before. He starts to ask and is pleading on his knees in his utter humility that feels like humiliation. He's got nothing to lose. He starts to ask for everything. But of course, he's on his knees. And none of that's going to happen because we know what's going on in his house. And to add insult to injury, I'm going to read you something a Buddhist nun insists is true. And she says, this Buddhist nun named Pema Chodron says this: this fundamental richness is available in each moment. The key is to relax. Because when we're able to be here very directly, then we find this fundamental richness everywhere. This wealth is the nature of everything. It's like the sun in that it shines on everyone without discrimination. It's like a mirror that is willing to reflect anything without accepting or rejecting. This fundamental richness is available in each moment. It is everywhere. I would not have the nerve to say to Jacob and Rachel, there's a fundamental richness here everywhere around you, and I don't know what your problem is, but can't you see the fundamental richness? We are in our life. We're in our life, and we are being told by these teachings all the time there's a fundamental richness. And it's like, hello, do you not see our situation? Right? Now I'm going to add insult to injury because the Course in Miracles not only doesn't see our situation, it goes further and it says something so wacky. It seemingly doesn't seem to understand the human problems that we all face. When I look in my wallet and it's empty. They looked in their cupboards and it's empty. We look on the other side of the bed if we're living alone and don't want to be, and it's empty. What don't these teachers get about the reality of emptiness that I'm looking at? So the Course in Miracles says this. It has the audacity to say, you have only one problem. There's only one problem you have. There's only one problem that you have. One. And we're counting up the problems that we have. And we know they count to more than one. And it insists we have only one. And it says if we would address the one problem that we have, if we would make the most important work that we do every day to focus on the one problem we have, if we would stop focusing all our attention on the other problems that we think are the one problem that we have, trying to solve those problems, because we know when we solve those problems, we can relax. That's all. We just want to relax finally in our life if we could just solve these problems. And it says if you would take all the energy you expend in attention and focus and drive and desire and put it in one place, focusing on the one problem that you have, it would change everything. And all the other problems that you seemingly have would take care of themselves. And so we say, or I'm waiting for somebody to say, so tell us what the one problem is. I mean, if it's only one problem, don't you want to pull out your pen right about now and a sheet of paper and put down what the one problem is? Because if it's only one problem, you only have one thing to do. Focus on the one problem, fix the problem. Now it's only one thing. So we get to the edge of our seat and it's like, what's the one problem, right? Years ago, you think I'm just going to tell you what the one problem is? You're going to have to participate in this process and follow me all around the globe until we get to the one problem, because I'm going to tell you another story. So years ago, when I began, my very, very, very first experience was in a tiny little church behind a Greek diner across the street from Bloomingdale's. Okay, that was my first job, my first intra-ministry job, as it turned out. And it was a surprise to me that it had happened. Somebody had told me, you don't belong at this church. I was at another church. Some man came over to me at coffee hour and said, you don't belong here. You need to go to another church. And it was like, first, wow. And secondly, I went there. The next Sunday I went there, and it happened to be the exact Sunday that the interim minister from Florida said, well, today's my last day, right? So I happened to raise my hand and say, I'll volunteer to be the interim minister until the next interim minister, real interim minister came. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you this whole story, a walk down memory lane for me, is because at that time when I spoke, I had a podium that was always in front of me, and on that podium I always had my talk. And my talk was this script, but it wasn't just a script of exactly what I was going to say. It was a script that was marked up with magic markers in all different colors. Colors that said, speak this line dramatically. That was green, right? Then if I wanted a dramatic pause, I would put 2 black slashes. It would remind me, pause here for dramatic effect, right? Then if I wanted to get excited about something, that was a red line. If I wanted to look as spiritual as the line was, it was a purple line. So I had a whole color-coded talk. Now the trick of this talk that I had worked out was I had my whole talk prepared. I had it all color-coded. I memorized it. And then I seemingly looked like I got up and gave a completely spontaneous talk, and nothing about it, not one bit of it was spontaneous. Not a bit of it was spontaneous. It looked spontaneous. I was that good. It's New York. Everybody's an actor on some level, right? So I made it look spontaneous, but it was as prepared and rehearsed, and that script, I mean, if you would have seen behind the scenes, I clutched that script as if my entire life depended on that script. It was the Scrawny cow. I thought what I offered to people was how good that script was. I was only as good as that script that I created and memorized that I then presented to you. And without that script, there was no teaching, there was no talk, there was no me. I was that script. And a day came, because a lot of work went into that script. I spent Monday through Saturday working on that piece of art, right? So one week came, and in that week I got, unbeknownst to me, don't know how this happened, I got a bladder infection. So I go right to my, and if you don't know a bladder infection, let me just tell you, a bladder infection is so painful that in the moment, yeah, there are people, yes, they're saying, in the moment, I'm going to do an imitation of what happens when the pain crosses past you. You literally just have to brace yourself and let the wave of pain go. You're beaded with sweat, and when it goes, it's like, oh my God, I got to sit down. That's a bladder infection. I go to my doctor and I say, I have a bladder infection. I don't even know how I got it. He said, well, the only way you're going to get a bladder infection is these 3 ways. Did you do this? No, I didn't do that. Did this happen? No. Did you do that? No. He said, well, then you can't have one, right? And I said, ow, ow. Right? I have one. So he gives me these little pills to take, and he says, you know what? It's going to take a couple of days. Well, the problem was I had a talk to give within a couple of days, and I had a script to create, right? So what happened was I was laying in bed for those days instead of working on my script. So that by the time I got up on Sunday, I had no choice. I literally had no choice. I couldn't come up with the script. I came up all by myself. And it was the first time ever, as what I knew myself to be a public speaker, that I gave a talk that moved me, that surprised me, that changed me. I'd never felt anything giving a talk before. So Monday comes, and I think, oh my God, this is really interesting. So I do, what I've done since 1989. I did what I call a soul session. A soul session, and I've been doing this since 89, however many years that is. You take a couple of breaths down in your body. This is what I do with people, but I also do for myself. I take a couple of breaths down in my body and connect to that place of the soul source within me, the place of the I am. And I asked the question, what is this bladder infection about? Because the doctor said it's impossible for you to physically have one. So there must be another reason why I have this. And I asked the question to the great I am that dwells inside of me, and it said this. It said these exact words, which I'll never forget because it was wrong. It was wrong on every level. It said, let go of the script. Right? Let go of the script. Let go of the scrawny cow. What? The scrawny cow is what stands between me and not having anything. The script is what stood between me and not being able to do what I was supposed to do as a minister. And yet I had an experience which taught me something else. That experience up there had a fundamental richness I had never experienced in my entire life. I had never felt fundamentally rich with my script. I felt in control. I felt in charge. I felt constricted. I felt the boundaries of what I had to do and how it had to be. I felt correct. I gave a talk that was correct, that was right. But I never felt fundamentally rich at all. And something hit me in that moment. The same way it hit Jacob in that moment, except he didn't know it. As Jacob was on his knees in the woods praying, which is another way of saying surrendering. And what are we surrendering? We are surrendering. We are not surrendering our problem, although it looks like we're surrendering our problem, our issue. Because it's the only thing that'll get us to our knees. Then we get to our knees, we end up, and I mean knees figuratively. You know that moment where you are crushed under the weight of something and you just can't figure it out. He's on his knees and he hears something. He hears some twigs breaking in the woods. So there's somebody in the woods with him. And he gets up and he looks around. He sees an old man stumbling around in the woods who looks drunk, actually, to him. So he goes over to the old man. He says, old man, I see you've had too much wine to drink tonight. He said, you can sleep on our floor on a cot if you want to. And the old man said, no, I'm not drunk. He said, I'm dying. He says, well, why are you here in the woods, not dying in your house? He said, I don't want to be in my house, because in my house, my family's waiting for me to die, because they know I have a lot of money, and they can't wait for me to go to get their hands on the money, and I'm not dying in that kind of place. I'd rather die in the woods, where my treasure is buried. He said, they don't know it, but I buried my treasure in this woods, so that nobody would get it, because they didn't deserve to have it. And with that, he started coughing. He fell down in his weakness and fell over as he was reaching for a piece of paper in his pocket. He fell over dead. So Jacob tends to him a little bit, and he pulls out a piece of paper, the piece of paper the man was trying to show him, and it's a piece of paper with a map of something buried in these very woods. So my soul, our soul says to me, let go of the script. Let go of the script. He didn't meet this man until he let go of the cow. And if we don't understand that all of life is a movement toward our wholeness, in fact, the Tao Te Ching says that exact thing. Surrender brings wholeness. Surrender brings your completeness. Surrender brings your perfect life. Because when you surrender, you open your arms to the whole universe. What we're surrendering is the I. And we're surrendering into the I am. We finally realize what Joseph Goldsmith told us years ago, which is our first life is doomed to fail. Our first life is doomed to fail. Why? Because it is built on the consciousness that is scrawny. It is built on the consciousness that a scrawny cow is what God could possibly have in mind for us. That a scrawny cow and a little milk and a little cheese is enough for life. That a sheet of paper with a script on it is who I'm meant to be. Who I'm meant to be. We let go of, we surrender the scrawny consciousness. So it can be replaced with a fundamental richness. Well, wouldn't you think I would have just gotten that message so clearly? Pain, pain, pain. Hold the script. Pain, pain, pain. Let go of the script. Great, fundamentally rich experience. I got it. Until 2 weeks later, when I was up there on Sunday again with my script and my colors and my dramatic pauses, standing still, giving you the correct talk. There I was doing it again 2 weeks later. Right? How many times do we have to learn the same lesson? Like, dozens, hundreds. And there I was weeks later doing the exact same thing, holding on for dear life to this script. I felt the fundamental richness, but I couldn't hold it. Holding on to the script, man. Monday morning, I get a bladder infection. I couldn't believe it. That was so wrong. I'm a minister. I'm doing God's work. Give me a break, right? So I go back to my doctor and I say it returned. He said, well, have you done this? No, didn't do that. Did this happen? No. Have you had this kind of experience? No. He said, well, you can't have it. It can't be back. So I took the pain pills. I went back to my house. I went down to the level of my soul, which you can do for illness, for lack, for loss. You can do it for any situation in your life that seemingly makes no sense to you. And I asked, what is this pain? And it said, again, let go of the script. Right? We only have one problem, the Course in Miracles says. Now, if we go over for a moment to the teachings of the 12 steps, you will be amazed to see that the first 3 steps breaks it all down for us and makes it so simple. Step 1, I can't. Step 2, I am can. The I am that is God, that is source, that is me, as me can. Step 3, I surrender to it. That's what we're letting go of. We're letting go of the scrawny cow of consciousness to enter into a fundamentally rich consciousness. Because as much as I prayed to be a better speaker, as much as I prayed to give a better talk, as much as I prayed to be my destiny, I couldn't as long as I was holding on to the script, which was scrawny, but I didn't know it because I thought the script is what stood between me and not even being able to give a good talk. Just like they thought their cow was their riches. So fast forward years later, I got rid of the podium. I got rid of the script. I still prepare. I still do my work. I still make sure that I am always in study, in learning, in my life, and on the page. All of my life is as a student, so I may share freshly in the moment, with immediacy, what I'm learning in the moment that works, along with everybody else, what works and why, and all my resistance to it. And I can stand up without a script, and I discovered this is the fundamental richness that Spirit wanted for me. As long as I thought I had to do my living on the page, I was not doing it in my life. As long as I was holding on to the page, I couldn't even feel anybody in the room. I couldn't feel myself. I was connected only to the channel through which the source moves, mistaking the channel for the source. Hear that. We mistake the channel for the source. And when we do that, we think it's our husband's income that is our source. Then our husband's income becomes our scrawny cow. We think that these government checks of unemployment, that's our source, as opposed to a channel. And the moment we make that channel our source, that we can't live without, it becomes a scrawny cow, and we begin the point of diminishing returns. The moment I think that anyone or anything in this world, any channel on earth that good comes to me is my source, it becomes a scrawny cow, a scrawny source. Because it was never meant to be a source. It was a channel. This cow was a channel. But we can't see past the channel to the fundamental richness that is there. So we mistake the scrawny things in our life for our source, and we have to hold on to them. I loved my script. I worshiped my script. They love their cow. We love our little channels, our little jobs, the people who give us things, somebody who gives us a tithe, something where we get some good, and we have to hold on to it, and we become so afraid, and we constrict, and that is why Joel Goldsmith said the first life that we live is doomed to fail, because it is built on the premise that our channels are our sources. So life sweeps in, removes the channel. Let go of the source. Let go of what you think the source is, it says. It comes in, and we say, wow, why did life punish me with a bladder infection? Why did this great teacher come in and eat them out of house and home until they had no money at all? So then we have to turn to Ernest Holmes for a moment before we pull all these strings together magically. Ernest Holmes did something great. He gave us these steps for a spiritual mind treatment, and they begin the same way each time, no matter what problem we have. Connect to the highest thought of who you are, which is source, living source, divine mother, father, source, God, Tao, one mind. Know that it exists, and then stake your claim, your connection to it. Put those first two pieces, God is, I am, together, connect them up, know them as who you are, who I am, and no matter what else you pray for, doesn't make a difference. You will be praying from the place of the I am. Once you know who you are, once I know who I am, once I get to the I am, anything I pray for is going to be coming from the wholeness of who I am. And everything in life always that happens to us actually happens for us. Why? To move us to the place of I am, because we're stuck in a place of thinking, I, and the I doesn't know what to do. The I is so afraid. The I is all alone. So he said, put these two things together. God is, I am. Source is, I am. It's what I am. It's what I am. Now, he said, I'll tell you what I do every single day. So you do your treatments and do them in the morning when they have real tremendous power for you. And then you go out in your day, he said, not a day goes by in my life, he said, where I don't ask myself, stop right there, stop in the middle of my day and ask myself who I am. Who I am. And what is he doing? He's taking the first two steps of a spiritual mind treatment, bringing it into his day and saying, let me remind myself in the middle of my life who I am. Step one, I can't. 12 steps says. Step two, I am can. Step three, I surrender the I to the I am. And then in my I amness, I am in my wholeness. And what happens? I can get on the stage and not have a script that I hold on to. In fact, I become a living script. I become the living word. We are the living word. That is my purpose. That is what I do. So years later, the Baal Shem Tov is walking down the street, and he sees, him and his students see a beautiful carriage go by with Jacob and Rachel in it, dressed in gorgeous finery, gorgeous clothes. And one of the students says, "Hey, isn't that the couple who we went to their house and ate them out of house and home all those years ago?" And the Baal Shem Tov, they all stop, all the students stop, watch him. He goes, "I think that's them." He says, "Look at them. They don't seem to have a care in the world." So they're not only rich. We think riches is riches. They're not only rich, they are fundamentally rich. Here's the difference. Here's the difference between winning lottery and calling yourself rich and riches. Fundamentally rich is you know that fundamental riches is the I am that is you. And the I am that is you is what's fundamentally rich, which means no matter whether your money is up or down or gone sideways, it doesn't make a difference what happens in the world of form, because you know the richness is the I am that you are, and nobody can take that away from you. That's why we don't have a care in the world. And the Baal Shem Tov said, "Yeah, that's them." He said, Jacob and Rachel, they did not know that life had prepared for them a banquet. That everything they ever wanted, of course, was there for them. They did not know that life is rich and they could partake in any part of those riches they want. He said, because they didn't know it, they didn't ask for it. And because they didn't ask for it, they didn't get it. And that's why we had to come into their life and help them. Let go of the scrawny cow. Let go of the script. Let go of the I consciousness and trade it out for the I am. Ernest Holmes stopped in his day and he said, "Who am I?" So I took that piece of advice, because if he did it, I want to do it. Not that I want to be Ernest, because I'd have to be 4 inches shorter, right? And a little stockier back here. But because I wanted to have his consciousness, so I stopped every day, and I invite you to do the same. Who am I? And I took the alphabet, A through Z. And I stop in the middle of every single day and I say, who am I? And I start with A. I am absolute presence here in this moment in time, disguised as me, but knowing that I'm divine. B, I am beautiful. Because that's how life created me to be inside and out. I am clear in this moment, because in this moment I'm trading out my scrawny consciousness for my fundamentally rich consciousness. D, I am devoted to these teachings, because these teachings help me solve the only one problem that I have, that we have. And here's the problem. The problem is separation. The separation from the I am that we are. I am E, I am enthusiastic, I am F, and I forgive myself for all of the harmful things I've done to myself and others from that I scrawny consciousness, because I didn't know any better. Right? I am H, I am happy to be in this moment, surrendering the scrawny for the rich. And I am good because God is good and God is what I am, period. I am H. I am happy. I am inspired to know this truth. J, I am joyful to be here in this moment. K, I know. And I give up trying to figure things out, and I replace it with knowing. In this moment, I know, because I am connecting to the who I am. And my I am consciousness knows. Your I am consciousness knows, and it knows that it knows. This is the way I go through the alphabet. You stop and you go through the alphabet. It'll take you 2 minutes, because you're all less wordy than I'll ever be, right? It takes me about 5, but those are the best 5 minutes I spend, because in those 5 minutes I let go of the I and I pick up the I am. I let go of the scrawny cow and I end up rich, fundamentally rich, without a care in the world, at least till dinner time, right? And I let go of the script so I can become what Spirit invites us all to become: free, living presence. Free, unencumbered, out of bondage, depending upon nothing on this earth except what is inside of us, that is always fundamentally rich and connected, never separate. We have one problem, and that problem, the Course in Miracles says, is separation. Make nothing more important than working on your proximity to who you truly are, to heal the gap of that separation, to connect with the truth of who you are, and you will see all the problems that you have the funniest way of taking care of themselves. Enough said.